Laura Looney Bin transcript, guys, from her deposition when she tried and failed to sue Bill Maher for defamation because Bill Maher made jokes about her allegedly, hypothetically, potentially having certain type of relations with Donald J. Trump, and she thought that that was defamation, even though she had told other people that had happened. Allegedly had told people that. Miss Looney Bin, we've met before, but my name is Kate Bolger. As you know, I represent the defendants in this case. Have you ever been deposed before? Yes. And when were you deposed? I believe it was last year. I think it was last March, and it was for, I believe, a malpractice case. Okay, you were party to that litigation? Yes, I filed a malpractice case. Who did you file against? Against a former lawyer, Ron Coleman, who at one point represented me in a lawsuit I filed against the Council on American Islamic Relations. Okay. Has that litigation come to a conclusion? No. What is the status? I believe a few days ago their motion to dismiss was struck down, and it's about to proceed to trial. Have you been deposed in any other litigation on that one? No. Great. Well, let me give you some ground rules. I ask you questions, you give me answers. We should try to not talk over each other. If you can please remember to use your oral responses rather than nodding your head or shaking your head, that's easier for the Samuel to take down. So Looney Bin says, I do tend to talk quickly. It is just how I talk. If it is too quick, just say to me, hey, you're going too quickly. I'm sorry. No, this is the lawyer saying this. My bad. And I will just slow it down. If you're confused by a question, you can ask me and I will restate for you. Did you do anything to prepare? Yes. What did you do? I reviewed my case, reviewed all of the filings and the lawsuit, and had conversations with my lawyer. How long did you meet with your lawyer? This morning, couple hours. Review the ground rules. So, about how many hours do you think that was? Like breaks and everything in between, and of course, it wasn't the only thing we discussed because, you know, he's my lawyer in my other litigation as well. I'd say probably about 5 hours. Did you look at any documents? Yes, I reviewed the complaint. Okay. Did you talk to anyone else at all? I mean, it's public, right? So people know that I have a deposition today, but I only spoke with my attorney about the details of my deposition. But it is public. It's in the media. It's been widely publicized. By whom? The media. People know that there's a deposition. It's a high-profile case. And I also, given the fact that, you know, I'm a journalist, and this takes me away from my work as a journalist, I let everybody know that I would be offline today because I have a deposition. How did you let everybody know? On my Elon Musk Zone account, obviously. You didn't quite answer my question, which was, did you talk to anyone else about the deposition? So would you answer that question? Objection. If you had any conversation with anyone else. Looney Bin. I have only spoken to my attorney, but as I said before, you know, I'm followed by millions of people online, all right? Kind of a big deal. And there are many people, millions of people who know that I have this deposition today. You were at the White House yesterday, right? Yes. Okay, who did you speak with at the White House? I had a meeting with the Vice President, J.D. Couch. Did you speak to anyone else? Just security and his staff. Did you mention to J.D. Couch that you're being deposed? Objection, relevancy. Looney Bin. I'm not going to discuss my conversations. I think it's inappropriate to discuss my conversations, but no, I did not talk about my deposition. Did you talk about this lawsuit with Mr. Couch yesterday? No, I did not. Did you talk about my law firm with Mr. Couch yesterday? No. Did you talk to anybody at security about the deposition? No. Did you talk to anybody in JD Couch's staff? No. Did you talk to anybody JD Couch's staff about the lawsuit? No. But obviously, because this is a widely publicized case that the media has reported on, given your client's so she's pissed. She's using him as a proxy for Bill Maher here. Given your client's defamation of me and the fact that he is a well-known chump hater, it is well known that this lawsuit is ongoing. And so it's not unreasonable that many people, including, you know, members of the White House, are probably aware. What's your basis for believing that members of the White House are aware? Because it's been reported on by many media outlets. Have you spoken to anybody in the White House about this? No. spoken to any staff member? Not about the lawsuit, but again, members, staff in the White House are aware. How do you know? Because it directly relates to President Trump, and I'm so confident that his staff would be aware of a high-profile lawsuit involving one of his biggest critics who falsely accused me of having sex with the President of the United States, which is also falsely accusing the President of committing adultery against his wife, the First Lady. How dare you? How dare you insult Melania that way? So the lawyer says, so I'm confused because you're certain that the White House is aware of this, but you claim that you haven't spoken to anybody else. Can you please, of anybody at the White House staff, objection? I'm not done asking my question. What are you testifying is that you don't think you've spoken to anybody about this, but you're sure they're aware. Well, it's my best belief. I'm asking you. It's my best belief, Miss Loomer. I'm answering your question. No, you're not. It's my best belief that people, Miss Looney Bin, the way this is going to work going forward is one at a time, please. That I'm going to ask a question. You're going to wait for me to finish it. Yeah. And then I'm going to hear your answer. Yeah. That's how this works. I answered your question. You don't like my answer. So I'm going to do it again. Go ahead. And you're going to respond. Go ahead. You have testified that you didn't talk to anybody in the White House, and you're certain that they know about it. How do you reconcile those two things if you haven't spoken to anybody about this case? Her lawyer, okay, that's 4 questions. Compound question, inappropriate question, and please don't badger my witness. You're being very aggressive, more than aggressive. You're being, frankly, disrespectful. Ms. Loomer, please answer the question. I suppose I can't read their mind, but, given the fact that the president has a, very active communications team that monitors all the fake news headlines about President Trump, it's my best belief that they are aware of the fact that this lawsuit is ongoing and are likely aware that I have this deposition today. I mean, it's been widely reported. I mean, duh, I'm a big deal. I'm Laura Loomer. Hello. You said... And I posted about it on my social media because I literally post 25,000 times per day nonstop. And if I don't post about it, it doesn't count. And most of the president's staff follow me on social media because, again, I'm a big deal, all right? Get it through your head, duh. Those are my additions there. You have said this deposition was well publicized. It was well publicized by you, correct? I have a right to defend myself, and I have a right to fight back against Bill Maher's sexist, misogynistic, malicious comments about me that are obviously defamatory. He accused me of having sex with the president, and as a result, I have been subjected to a lot of harassment. It threatens my safety, and so yes, I publicized the fact that I am suing Bill Maher and his enabler, HBO. How dare they? How dare they? And I have a right to do that. You said you publicized it on the Elon Musk zone, is that right? Yes, that's my social media that I was permanently banned from for a long time, and then I got back, thanks to Elon. And when you publicized it at this time, did you put a link to your Give, Send, Go? Yeah, of course. I'm not a millionaire like Bill Maher. I'm not worth billions of dollars like HBO, and my tax records prove that, which you have. Those are confidential, of course. And I'm not rich. I'm not ashamed that I'm not rich. I'm not a wealthy woman. I have a lot of supporters, and people know in this country that there's lawfare. Weaponized lawfare is what your law firm specializes in. You represent the biggest chump haters. You recently had to settle with President Trump. You represented George Stephanopoulos in a defamation case. You falsely accused the president of being a rapist, I believe, right? That's your firm? Me? Well, your firm represented George Stephanopoulos, and you guys had to settle, which surely you had to give the president $15 million to his presidential library because you advertised that you actually go out of your way. Your law firm solicits chump haters and Democrats demon rats, who spread lies about the president, including the Steele dossier, which was a lie paid for by President Trump's opposition. Lies that he's a rapist, despite all the proof to the contrary that we've all seen. You represent CNN, which has also spread lies about the president, lies about me, and we hate lying in MAGA. We don't stand for lying ever. Everyone knows MAGA's against lying. We don't tolerate lies. And so, of course, I have a right to defend myself, and I have every right to post a link to my Give, Send, Go for digital begging to ask my supporters to help me cover the cost of this very expensive litigation. So, Miss Looney Bin, my question that got that speech was actually, did you post a Give, Send, Go link, which is a yes or no question? Yes, I posted it. So it's fine that you get to answer the questions however you want. But just so you know, if you continue to answer the questions in that way time and time again, I will bring you back for a second day of deposition. Her lawyer, well, you... because that wastes my time. Well, that's not for you to decide, Miss Bulger. Looney Bin, you have 7 hours. My next question is, what is your email? You have 7 hours. Her lawyer says, stop for a second. Stop for a second, okay? I want to object to badgering the witness, to the arrogance and belligerency here, and you do not have the right to make a decision whether she comes back or not. The judge will. Yes, and I'm asking you, Miss Loomer, what is your email address? I'm asking, wait a second, I'm not done. What is your... Yes, you are. Oh my God. The lawyer says, yes, you are, to her lawyer. I'm asking you, what is your email address, Miss Looney Bin? I'm not done. Miss Looney Bin, what is your email address? Looney Bin, well, I'm not going to dox myself publicly. There has been some kind of protection so that I don't get, there has to be some kind of protection so I don't get publicly harassed. Your lawyer has just gave a whole speech about how this was going to be public, but if you like, I agree to keep this confidential. So what is your email address? Wait a second here. I will give that to you. There's no reason she can't answer the question. I'll keep it confidential. What is your email address? No, I'm not going to put this on the public record. We'll have I agree with you. It doesn't have to go on the public record. We'll have a separate record. Okay? It doesn't have to go on the public record. All right, fine. What is your email address? Not here. We're not going to... We're going to have a separate, you're answering the question. No, don't answer, okay? Don't answer. I'm sorry, you're actually instructing the witness not to answer. Correct. The question, what is your email address? I think it's laura@looneybin.com. After I've agreed to keep it confidential? No. What I said was, I've agreed to keep it confidential. Let me talk to Miss Bulger. What is your email address? Let me talk, all right? Don't be rude to me like you were in the last deposition. Don't yell at me, Mr. Clayman. Mr. Clayman, I'm not yelling at you. You're yelling at my client, okay? Don't yell at me, Mr. Clayman. You can ask all those questions. That will be a separate record that you can ask. Just keep them. We'll answer those questions. Oh my God. All right, let's skip ahead a little bit. They're just going to keep fighting about this. You don't get to decide the record. What's your email? No, don't answer. I'll take it to the judge. What's your telephone number? Same thing. You've been grandstanding about how this is public. Do you send text messages, Miss Loomer? Yeah, I text. Do you text on your phone? Yes. Do you use Facebook Messenger? No, I don't have a Facebook account. Is that because you were banned? Yes. You have to be pretty bad to get banned from Facebook. It takes a lot. Do you use Signal? I'm a journalist, occasionally. Okay. Do you use WhatsApp? Occasionally. Do you instant message people on the Elon Musk zone? It's called a DM, but yeah. Thanks for the correction. How do you communicate with Daddy Chump? Well, sometimes some of his staff will relay messages. How do they relay those messages? Call. They'll call me. Sometimes, there's been several times that the president has called me from the phone of his staff. He has had his staff call me. The president does not use email. I do not email the president. Do you text him? I text with his staff. What app do you use? Just regular text. How many times have you spoken with him on the phone? Numerous times. Her lawyer. Indefinite is the time. Objection. How many times have you spoken to the president on the phone? I don't know. I mean, I've known him for several years and even known him in the biblical sense. So I would say, several times. Objection. Many times. Sorry? Many times. What is many times? Would you say more than 100? No. 50? No, not more than 50. About 50? Perhaps, but definitely not more than that. Like I said, I communicate mostly with the staff or have, it's mostly staff. Yeah. So you said that I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right. You said that sometimes the staff calls you and sometimes the president calls through his staff. Is that correct? Yeah, because it's the president of the United States. Just going to be, calling people. Like, communications are protected when you're the president. And so for national security purposes, for, purposes of protecting people's communication devices. And so, the way it works, if somebody calls, generally they call on like a staff phone or a designated phone and, it's the president. So you said you've spoken to the president about 50 times. Is that separate from the conversations you've had with the staff? Is that separate? You said you spoke to the president 50 times. Looney bin. I wouldn't say that it's been 50 direct conversations. You asked how those communications take place, and sometimes they take place through the staff. And so it's a combination. How many times have you texted with the staff? Probably the same amount. Probably the same. About 50 times? I would say so. I mean, these are people that I've known, several years. So I've been involved in conservative media and conservative politics for about 12 years, and so I've known a lot of his staff for a very long time. What social media accounts do you use? Well, it's been widely publicized that I've been banned on social media for speaking the truth and for supporting my cult leader. And everybody knows that there's, a coordinated censorship against the president and his supporters. This has been documented extensively in congressional hearings, lawsuits, testimony by social media executives who admitted that the FBI worked with them to interfere in the election. And so I've been reinstated to the Elon Musk zone. Thanks to Elon Musk. I use the Elon Musk zone. I use false social. Occasionally, I'll use Telegram. I have a Gab account. I have a Gitter account. I recently, just to test the waters to see if Facebook was serious about being against censorship, I tried to create another Instagram account, which I don't really use. I use it mostly for research purposes, but I'm most active on Elon Musk zone and false social. What's your handle on the Elon Musk zone? It's at, I have several accounts. I have at Laura Loomer. I have Loomer Unleashed. I have another account that's Loomer Strat, which is an account I recently created. Loomer Strat, can you spell it? Loomer Strat is an X account I create for a research company that I recently launched called Loomer Strategies. And what is the purpose of that? Loomer Strategies is a company that I created for the sake of doing research, and like opposition research, vetting, it's just another company. Opposition for vetting for whom? Whoever needs opposition, research, or for vetting. What is your false social handle? It's at Laura Loomer. Getter, what's your handle? At Laura Loomer also. Okay, how about Gab? I believe it's also at Laura Loomer. And I think you said you use Telegram. What's that one? It's either like Loomer or at Laura Loomer. I don't really use it that much. I used to use it a lot more when I was banned. It was one of the only platforms I could use. But it's either my name or real Laura Loomer or Loomer, one of those. I'm happy to go look after the deposition and get it to you. Whose decision was it to bring this lawsuit? It was my decision. And did you speak to anybody about the decision? You don't have to. Please don't. Please don't tell me about conversation with lawyers. Just, obviously I filed a lawsuit, so I have an attorney. Just my attorney. How did you find your attorney? I've known him for several years. He's been my lawyer, at least one of my lawyers, since 2018. Where did you meet? Nevada, 2017. What were you doing in Nevada? I'm a journalist, so I was investigating the Las Vegas pew-pewing, which was a a pew-pewing that took place at a music festival, and I had broken a lot of stories, and I was out there for several months investigating irregularities with the pew-pewing, and Mr. Clayman was there having a press conference with one of his former clients, Clive and Bundy. So I showed up to the press conference and I met him and exchanged contact information with him. Eventually got in touch with Mr. Clayman when I got banned from Twitter in 2018, and he represented me in filing an antitrust case against several social media companies that banned me. What was the result of the case? It went to the Supreme Court, and ultimately the court decided not to hear the case. Clarence Thomas issued an opinion saying that the case was very well thought out. That's not a flex. That's Clarence Thomas said it. And that it raised relevant arguments about the influence of social media companies acting as state actors. And it was of his opinion that the court should take a case up like that in the future. So that was his dissent, right? Yes. It's because you lost in the Supreme Court, right? Well, they decided to not take the case up. Right. And you lost in the appellate level, right? Well, objection, relevancy. I guess so. You lost in the trial court too, right? Oh, there was no trial. The first court, that's a yes. Okay, I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask, she says, but it doesn't mean, it doesn't I would say that, let her, she's allowed. I just want to say, one at a time, please. Yes, there is no pending question. You may not speak. She's allowed to. May I have? You give your answer. She is not. No, you may ask her a follow-up. You don't make the rules. Then she says, just because I lost the case doesn't mean that it wasn't relevant, and I was ahead of the curve as I usually am. And it was later noted during the congressional hearings in which executives of these social media companies testified under oath that they were in fact behaving as state actors and acting at the direction of people like Joe Biden and our federal law enforcement agencies, and they were behaving in a politically biased manner. And, Donald Trump would never behave in a politically biased manner. We know that. So they're definitely not hypocrites there. And so it was our belief that had the case, been reviewed in front of the court after that information, was released under oath in front of Congress, that there would have been a different outcome. And, some people can say I lost it, but a lot of other people say that it was a pioneering case. And I was the canary in the coal mine. And it really, it paved the way for other free speech warriors like myself and people who've been demonized by President Trump, demonized because of their, oh my God, what a Freudian slip. She meant to say because of their support, and she said demonized by him. Demonized because of their support of President Trump to file lawsuits against these social media companies for behaving as state actors. Okay, I'm going to move to strike that, and I'm going to take that time back because that was not responsive to my question, and I'll add that time to my 7 hours. You don't get to decide. We're gonna mark as Exhibit 1. Can you please stop being so arrogant and abrasive? Okay, it's amazing how you don't throw things at me. This is her lawyer. No, that's intentional, okay? Says, oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to reach it to you. It wasn't intentional. You treat both of us with respect. That's something which has not happened in this case. Okay, I've asked the court reporter to hand you the exhibit, which is the document request that were propounded to you. Have you seen this document, Miss Looney Bin? Yes. Okay, what did you do to search for documents responsive to this document? Vague and ambiguous. You might want to ask her, more specifically. Miss Looney Bin, can you answer my question? Well, as I said, and as my attorney said too, there were objections made regarding relevancy to some of those overreaching requests for documents, and so I provided relevant documents, unlike Bill Maher. Let's start out by saying, number 1, all documents and communications concerning the September 13th episode 2024. What did you do to search for those documents? Well, you have the episode and you have Answer My Question, which is, what did you do to search for those documents? The episode on September 13th was aired by HBO, and so it's not like I planned to wake up and see that Bill Maher had falsely accused me of having sex with President Trump. And so I looked for the transcript and the video recording of the episode and the media publications that were published in the aftermath of the airing of the episode, where it says, all documents and communications between you and President Trump. What did you do to search for these documents? All right, they're arguing. The lawyers are arguing. They asked the question again. Well, there was an objection. And as I said, I'm a journalist. And so there's a lot of, restrictions on what constitutes communications. And, the fact of the matter here is that Bill Maher falsely accused me of having sex with President Trump. And, there's no evidence that said I had sex with President Trump. I've never even been in the same room with President Trump alone. And, I provided all the documents that were relevant, and I did search for the documents, and I provided everything necessary. Did you search for your private communications with Mr. Trump or his staff? Yeah, I believe so. Did you produce them? I turned over whatever I had that was not objected to my attorney to give to you. But again, there were objections, so your testimony under oath that you've never exchanged any written communications with Trump or his team. I already said that I have communicated with President Trump's staff over the phone. You also said you got text, right? Yes, but that has nothing to do with, I didn't ask you what, but that has nothing to do with it. Wait, but you, and as I'm a journalist, and so, so you did not search for any documents. That's not true related to the communications. That's not true. They were, let me ask the question, Miss Looney Bin. You did not search for any documents related to your communications with Mr. Trump or his team that your lawyer decided weren't relevant, correct? That's not true. There were objections. Right. You decided what your objections were, and then you didn't search for any documents other than what you thought was that's up to you take that up with the judge. You take it up with the judge. But a lot of your requests, that's not true. A lot of your requests were very harassing and overreaching, and that's why my attorney objected to them, so you can take it up with a judge. Your client didn't even produce documents. Your client wants his entire deposition under seal because he doesn't want the world to see what a horrible, misogynistic, sexist person Bill Maher is. He admitted that her lawyer, wait. Miss Looney Bin, that is confidential, and you know it's confidential. And if you want to sit here and violate a court order, go right ahead. I'm not violating any court order. Miss, she did not give any testimony about what she said. Miss Looney Bin, did you search for all the documents supporting the complaint's allegations that the episode severely harmed and damaged you? Yes, I did. What documents did you produce? Turned over my resume, turned over my letter with the transition team. I'm not working in the White House, and so it has damaged me because I was expecting to work in the White House. And you have those documents, you have those communications that has my email. So you already have my email. So that's it? All you had was that? The only evidence you have of your reputation being damaged by the report was that one application you made to the White House? I turned over tweets. Then her lawyer says, wait. And she says, I turned over tweets. I turned over media reports that insinuated that I'm a WHORE, that I was having an affair with the president. I turned over a lot of news publications, including the additional episode that was published and aired by HBO and Bill Maher, in which he tried to compound the damages that he did to my reputation on September 13th, and episodes that were seen millions of times. Do you understand that when we asked for the documents that were asking for any and all communications you had with anyone about the episode, that misstates what you were asking for? You can refer to the specific request, but don't. Miss Loomer, answer my question. No, she doesn't have to answer your question. Looney Bin, I turned over documents. I consulted with my attorney on what was acceptable. And if there's anything that you find unacceptable, you can take it up with the judge. But you did not search for any documents. He's still asking her the same question. I have protections and I have rights, just like your client didn't turn over documents. What do you do for a living, Miss Looney Bin? I'm a journalist. You in fact describe yourself as an investigative journalist, correct? Yes. What does it mean to you to be an investigative journalist? Well, I expose fraud, and I look the other way about all the fraud that my president does. Corruption, waste, and abuse. I investigate wrongdoing. I expose people, like many of your clients, for their involvement in weaponization of government. I expose malicious lawfare. I expose all types of corruption, which is why I have amassed a very large following online, because I've broken a lot of very big stories exposing a lot of corruption in our country, despite looking the other way on all the corruption that Donald J. Trump is doing with his crypto fraud and NFTs and so on, and the ballroom, the list goes on. Do you follow a particular code of ethics in doing your investigative journalism? Yeah, I report the truth. Have you heard of the SPJ code of ethics? Yeah, but I also know that, a lot of the standards that are determined and defined by the lamestream media, and a lot of these journalistic entities are biased in nature. They lean heavily toward the left. And I'm also not naive, and I understand that there's a lot of bias perpetuated by the news, which you're familiar with. Obviously, you represented George Stephanopoulos, who had to settle with President Trump for $15 million. And you make a lot of money representing the purveyors of fake news who clearly don't abide by the rules of journalistic ethics. So you should ask your own clients whether or not they understand journalistic ethics. So again, maybe they wouldn't have had to settle with President Trump for $15 million if your client had understood journalistic ethics, right? Miss Looney Bin, my question was, have you ever heard of the SPJ Code of Ethics, and you suddenly launched into a tirade? And you continually do. No, I said yes. I'm just reminding you, I said yes, but also, no, I said yes. Looney Bin, I said yes, but I'm also not going to be gaslit by a demon rat lawyer who represents the fake news media and has given political donations to the demon rats. I've checked the FEC records because I'm an investigative journalist, and I know that you donated to the DCC. You donated to Act Blue, and you represent Trump haters, and you had to settle with President Trump because they are the purveyors of fake news. So I'm not going to be gaslit by you. I'll answer your questions, but I'm not going to be gaslit. Now, gaslit by my cult leader, on the other hand, yes, I will gladly be gaslit by him all day long. I mean, I believe Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Miss Looney Bin, by a demon rat lawyer. She's actually saying Democrat, guys, but anytime I read the word Democrat now and it's coming from these guys, I'm automatically changing it to demon rat to make fun of them, how goofy they are. You don't yell at me, Looney Bin. I'm not, and you don't get to make this personal. I'm not yelling at you because that's pathetic. Wow. I'm not yelling at you. I'm letting people know because this is probably going to go to trial, and I'm letting people know that I understand journalistic ethics, but your clients, people should know that you represented CNN, your law firm website. It says that you are Trump's least favorite firm. I don't say that. You make money. You monetize. You make money. How dare you make money as a lawyer? That's your job. You monetize. You did. You have since deleted, right, for the record, Davis Wright Tremaine has since deleted this article that they had highlighted on their website, Hollywood Reporter. We're going to start timing these, Miss Looney Bin. That's fine. Go ahead. We have 7 hours. We're here all day. We're having a lot more, sister. They have an article on their website which they have since deleted after I exposed them because they like to monetize off of malicious lies from the fake news media. So you should ask yourself and your law firm whether or not you believe in journalistic ethics. God. So you've never read the SPJ Code of Ethics? I don't care about reading. Literally, I don't care about reading, she said. I don't care about reading, you know, any made up rules by any made up ethics from purveyors of fake news and people that want to put their political affiliation ahead of the truth. So when people read what you write, Looney Bin, and I don't care to get a lecture from a demon rat lawyer who donates to demon rats, when people read what you write, are you holding it out to them as the truth? Yeah. You referred to yourself earlier as a free speech warrior, right? Yes. What's a free speech warrior? I fight for free speech. You also referred to yourself as a free speech absolutist, correct? Yes. What does that mean? Well, within the realms of acceptable speech, not defamation like your client has committed against me, I fight for freedom of expression and free speech. But that doesn't include malicious lies, including that lie that I had sex with President Trump. I do declare. How dare you? So what other categories of speech do you, a self-described free speech absolutist, not protect? You're a defamation lawyer. You surely understand that you cannot falsely accuse a woman of having sex with the president and trying to ruin his marriage, because we all know it's a real marriage and not a sham, and they're actually really in love with each other and it's not just fake and for show, simply because you don't like the fact that that person traveled to a presidential debate with the president and his campaign staff. Surely you know that. So or maybe you don't, because your clients have lost and have had to settle with President Trump. How many times is she gonna keep beating that drum? She keeps going back to that over and over and over. We got it, dude. You said it already. Because they defamed him. I don't know. Maybe you don't understand defamation. Have you ever taken a journalism course? Yes, I was valedictorian of Trump University, and I graduated with a 4.0 GPA, and I majored in broadcast and emerging media, and I minored in political science. Have you ever taken a journalism ethics course? Yes, in college. What did you learn in the course? I learned that the educational system in our colleges and universities is plagued by demon rats who pretend to be intellectuals who want to try to indoctrinate students with crazy things like empathy and human decency and equality and left-wing ideology. I learned about the importance of standing up for your rights, and I learned about the importance of not being bullied by professors who think they're so smart, think that you know nothing, and I successfully resisted being indoctrinated into a little mini Marxist and a communist, which is what we're seeing come out of a lot of American universities today. You know, it's why President Trump wanted to defund the Department of Education, because smart people don't like him, because people know that there's a progressive Marxist rot in our educational institutions. And so I would say that I took a lot of what I learned in college with a grain of salt, because I'm not going to let myself be a vehicle for Marxist indoctrination. Now let's talk some more about how Doge is going to give everybody checks, all right? But also Marxist indoctrination, but also waiting for that government handout from Doge. Just to put that together and to answer my question, I answered your question. What did you learn in a journalism ethics course? I told you what I learned. You said that you learned to not be a Marxist? Yes, that's true. You own a company called Illuminate Media? Yes. What is it? It's my media company. And what does it do? I have a website. I publish news. I have a show, a podcast called Looney Bin Unleashed, and we publish news reports and we do investigative reporting. How many people are employed? Myself, and I have a couple contractors. Do you want their names? Yes, I have a production company that I pay on a monthly basis. It's called Arc Studios. They just clip my videos from my podcast, they edit my clips, and they edit the news clips from my DC correspondent. His name is Charles Downs. This is him.
Well, I would apologize if I have said that. I've never said that.
You just say that.
But no, I didn't. I didn't say they weren't really sad. But anyways, it's nice to meet you. Who are you?
Charles Downs with Laura Loomer. You know who
I'm sorry.
I am.
No, I have no idea who you are. I've
who
never
I
seen
am,
you.
Don Lemon.
I have no idea. But my name is Lemon.
I like to call you Lemon.
Okay, well then I don't
But
know
no,
you.
everybody's like worked up about how you're downplaying Charlie Kirk's death. So I'm just saying.
I'm not downplaying Charlie Kirk's death. You're watching clips on
This is the best she could do. This guy is the best she could find.
Conservative media, and you work with Laura Loomer, so you have an agenda, and you're trying to find something that fits your agenda. So I'm sorry that you have to stoop to those depths, but here you are. So if you want to use me as someone to prove a point that's not true, then go for it. I'm used to it, but who is a lot of people? I'm not. A lot of people are saying it doesn't mean it's true.
Everyone's saying, hey,
I'm not on the internet like that.
You're saying conservatives aren't really sad. They just want to be angry.
No, I didn't say conservatives aren't really sad. I did say, I'll tell you what I did say.
What?
I did say that there are conservatives, probably like Laura Loomer and others, who are death grifting. They are grifting off of the sad and tragic death of Charlie Kirk for political and professional expediency. If they really cared about Charlie Kirk's death, if they really wanted to make a difference, what they would talk about is how not to have it happen again. How do we stop the proliferation of guns instead of, my name is Don, and so respectfully, I have no idea who you are, but what is your name?
Charles.
So Charles, I didn't call you Charles. Charles, be respectful. See, this is another way that you're not respectful. You say my name properly. It is Lemon.
All right,
And
yeah.
okay, thank you very much. It's nice to meet you. Have a great day. Oh, did she delete a tweet about Charlie Kirk? Why did she delete a tweet about Charlie Kirk? Oh, boom.
Why did the phone go down?
My DC correspondent, Charles Downs. He's your DC correspondent? He's a contractor? Yes. Does he work just for you? I believe so. I mean, I don't get into his personal business. He's a contractor. He's free to work for other people if he wants to, but he works with me. I've seen your show, Miss Loomer. Occasionally you ask someone to put something on a screen or something. Yeah. Who is it that you're talking to? My producer. Who is your producer? His name is Cannon. He's an employee of ARC Studios, the production company employee that employs their staff, and I contract out the production company. Okay. So Illuminate Media has no employees. Is that right? Other than you? Correct. Okay. I'm going to ask the court reporter to mark Exhibit 2, which I believe are the Bates numbers at the bottom. I'm going to try to get it to you without throwing it at you, Larry, but you're far away. That would be nice. That would be nice. Thank you. My first question, do you recognize what this is? This is a letter that I produced in your document request that I sent to Trent Morse, who currently works in the White House PPO office, and at the time, he was leading the transition team for President Trump. And this was sent on November 14th, 24. Copy of my resume and cover letter. Can I ask you to turn the letter, which starts the first page of the letter? Okay, Miss Looney Bin. I can't remember if I asked you this, so forgive me if I'm repeating the question. This is the letter you sent to the Trump transition team, correct? Yes, you drafted this letter? Okay, terrific. You begin by saying, with 10 years of experience as a communication professional and investigative journalist, what's the difference in your mind between communication professional and investigative journalist? Looney Bin. Well, they're overlapping. I mean, I'm appealing to the fact that I have many skill sets. I was the communications director for Project Veritas when I worked for Project Veritas out of college, Veritas. And, you know, I would say that qualifies me to say that I'm a I worked for a very well-known profile, probably like the leading undercover investigative journalism company in the entire country, especially during a presidential election year. I was their comms director, so I was truthful. And I have skills in, doing communications work outside of my reporting. So I can serve as communication director, press liaison, draft press releases. I have those skill sets. When I was applying for a position in the Trump administration, I was making it known what my talents and my skills are in my background. I was actually told that I was going to be working for President Trump when he hired me in March 23 during our private meeting with him and Susie Wiles at Mar-a-Lago. But this was during the primary, and President Trump had actually instructed Susie to onboard me to do research for perhaps assist with communications as well in the primary. And then ultimately, there was a whole big story in the New York Times, and that didn't end up happening. But I had just sent this as kind of a, an official, professional, like in a professional manner, just to have like a record of my resume and my cover letter because, you know, it's been widely publicized that President Trump had hired me in March and that, you know, there was a discussion about me bringing me on during the campaign when I was traveling, even though I wasn't working for the president. He was just, you know, a fan of my investigative reporting. And then also after the campaign, right? I was really hoping that I would have a job. And President Trump had said on multiple occasions that I would work for him. I'm just going to cut that, the lawyer says, okay, I'm just going to cut that down into smaller bits so I understand, if you don't mind. March 23, you were at a sit-down meeting. I'm not trying to misstate your testimony. That's fine, I understand. So when you were in March of 23, you were at Mar-a-Lago with Susie Wiles and the convicted felon con artist cult leader. So it wasn't a job interview. I'll tell you what the meeting was. I'd been investigating Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And there was always speculation he was going to run for president. And nobody like President Trump had taken a SHOT at him yet. And there hadn't been an official break because people always thought that they were allies. So it's important for people to have the context. In my capacity as an investigative journalist, I was reporting on the governor's misappropriation. And this was widely reported, you know, left-wing, right-wing media, you know, taxpayer funds in the state of Florida while the governor was the governor to run a shadow presidential campaign disguised as a book tour. And so I showed up to the book tour and, you know, I was there to report on it where I was living, you know, where I ran for Congress. And ultimately, the governor's and his staff called the police, and the police came and they said we had to leave because we were Trump supporters. And at that point, the video had gone viral. It was seen, I believe, 27 million times. It was all over the media. And President Trump had seen the video. And that was really the first breaking point that established the fact that Ron DeSantis was running against Trump. And so I was invited to a meeting at Mar-a-Lago because the president wanted to meet me, right? He wanted to meet me because he was impressed with my reporting. And he, in that conversation that took place in his office with Susie Wiles at Mar-a-Lago, he just kept asking me all types of different questions about, you know, what I thought about certain issues. He was very impressed how well versed I was. My reporting and understanding of political affairs. So he said he wanted to hire me on the spot, even though it's not a job interview. He instructed Susie Wiles to onboard me. I was supposed to start working for his campaign, but then you did not, correct? I did not. And why was that? Or why not was that? Well, you know, it's strange because the president instructed this to happen. And from my understanding of how it went down, Susie had announced to the campaign in an official meeting because they had their weekly meetings. This is what I was told. I wasn't there in the room, for this discussion, so I'm going off what I was told when I had a phone conversation with Susie Wiles. She told me she had made an announcement to the campaign about the fact that I would be joining the campaign. And it was her belief, this is what she told me, that one of the staff leaked it to the New York Times. So she's talking about how she didn't get hired, and she says the New York Times ended up planting a hit piece. They changed the title multiple times. It was something along the lines of, Trump has hired, you know, they called me anti-Muslim activist because I, you know, report the truth about Islamic T-word and anti-Semitism in America to work on his campaign. They got a lot of anonymous sources to basically say, oh, well, we didn't like this, or, oh, you know, yeah. Who knows if they're real sources because they don't, you know, attribute it to real people. But then there was a follow-up article by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. And they got another anonymous source to say I would not be working on the campaign. And so, you know, it was kind of the elephants in the room of the entire campaign season because, you know, there wasn't really anybody else who was breaking the kind of reporting that I was breaking that was so pivotal to Trump's lawfare. I exposed a lot of the weaponization against the Trump, you know? The Trump was very grateful for it, and his staff too. A lot of his staff were very grateful for it too. And I was, you know, given access, like many other journalists, to the campaign. Like I said, I have a media company with only one employee. And so my staff and I oftentimes, you know, traveled to the campaign events, and we were given press credentials to report on some of the rallies, right? You have to apply for the process, of course, like through your communications team. It's like a form you fill out, and then you just, they let you know when you can get inside the venue. And so, I went to South Carolina, I went to Iowa, I went to New Hampshire, I was in Florida. Let me interrupt you. I'm not sure that this answers my question. Well, I'm just trying to explain it to you because, there's been a lot of misinformation in the fake news media about it. So I was not an employee. I am not an employee of President Trump's. But it was completely normal for me to travel with the campaign. A lot of journalists traveled with the campaign, actually. It's just the media wanted to sensationalize me for some manner. Couldn't be anything to do with the time I locked myself to Twitter headquarters. So I'm just talking about the period of March 23, when you believed you were offered a job with the Trump campaign. I was offered a job, yes. Okay, I didn't mean to say otherwise. Yeah, you were offered a job by the Trump campaign. When was the offer withdrawn? It wasn't formally withdrawn. It was kind of bizarre. It was kind of just like silent treatment in a sense. Oh my God, they ghosted her. This is so pathetic. She's admitting that they ghosted her. Wow, they didn't even bother to tell her. You're not getting it. They just let her figure it out. It was kind of just like this silent treatment where I wasn't really officially contacted to say like, oh, your employment is being withdrawn. It was just kind of like not discussed, right? So it was just strange. And I don't want to press it, obviously, because I didn't want to upset the cult leader. And, I don't want to, obviously, I was upset that this had happened and that it was leaked. But I wasn't trying to create drama for the president because I cared more about, the cult leader and, my country than I did my ego. So I was willing to put it aside for the sake of not having some, fight in the media that they would have used to attack President Trump and his staff. Okay, you mentioned quickly, you said you're getting your credentials, your staff, and you said you used the phrase, my staff and I would get credentials. Who was the staff? Is the staff in the room with us right now? My staff, and I know I've used the term like employee energy. Oh my God. My staff versus employee, same thing, interchangeably. I mean, my staff, all one of them. Because obviously, there's contractors. The term employee, of course, it's different in tax purposes. But my staff, right? My contractors, the video production propagandist team that I travel with. So I would pay the expenses for my video, the propaganda team. And during the campaign too, I have my own media propaganda company. But because I was doing the show and it was very expensive, and I was working actually for a media propaganda company at the time too. So I had my own media propaganda company, but I was also working for a media propaganda company due to the sponsorship arrangement with my show. And I'm not working with that. I don't work with that company anymore. It's called TLM Media. I was working with them because it was their staff, right? And eventually their staff broke off and started their own company because they had, internal issues. But I'm explaining when I say I manage a team of employees. Even though I was employed by that company during the time period while still managing my own company, I still manage the companies, right? Because the employees were my team, right? Like my production team. And I was the main client, right? And I'm the main character in this story, all right? I'm Laura Looney Bin, all right? While I was working there too. So I just wanted to clarify that because, in media, you can Miss Looney Bin. There's no question pending about that. So let me ask you a question and then you can answer. But that's what I mean by staff. I pay for them to go with me, great. To travel, to cover events, okay. Other than that time in March 23, when the president told you he wanted you to work for him, was there ever been a time when the president or a member of his staff offered you a job? When was that? During the campaign. I remember I was sitting on the plane with the president when I think we were flying to Iowa for the primary, and he said, "You're going to come to DC with me," and his staff on the plane were clapping, right? And they said, "Oh, you do such fabulous work. You do great work." And he said that, "You're going to go to DC with me." And, Susie Wiles was on the plane when that happened, The press team was on the plane when that happened. A lot of people were on the plane. This president was sitting directly across from me because he had invited me to travel with his team. Had flown multiple times with them to Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. There was an understanding too. I had conversations with Susie Wiles that I would have a position in the White House after the election if Trump won. And he did win. And I had this conversation on the phone and in person multiple times during the campaign. So we've talked about the time in March. We've talked about the time you discussed it on the plane, right? Yeah, it was like the week of the Iowa caucus because there were some rallies and cult meetings, and I'm not remembering the exact dates. I mean, I don't have a calendar in front of me, and I saw, some fake news media coverage, and I believe the caucus was on January 15th. And so it was like the time period leading up to that because I spent about 2 weeks in Iowa. And I know that I believe I either flew to Iowa or flew back. I think I flew to Iowa with the president and his staff. I think I flew to South Carolina, New Hampshire as well. Okay. So there was the time in March, the time in and around the Iowa caucus. And then you said there were other times. Yeah. Like right before the election, like right before the presidential debate, which is when I traveled with President Trump to the debate in Philadelphia. And guess who told him about the eating the cats and the dogs, guys? Allegedly. Just so happened to be traveling with him on the way, huh? Any other times you talked about working with the president? I mean, after the election was over, I had conversations with the transition staff. You see this from the letter. And, I was like, oh, you have to talk to the transition team. But like I said, I was promised a position multiple times, not just by President Trump, but also Susie Wiles. So, I was told that this was their point of contact because they had it was like a formality, right? So even though they had told me that I'd be working for the president, you had to go through the process, right? So this was the process. And Trent Morse was in charge of that transition. And now he's the, I believe, deputy PPO. Great. Can you look at the next page of the exhibit? I'm going to have you read that. You're welcome to read. I'm not trying to trick you. You're welcome to read. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just having to point you to the right sentence. Additionally, you want me to read it? It says, my average monthly impressions, engagements on X alone for my investigations and insight over 500 million per month. Do you see that? Yes. Is that accurate? Yeah. If you look at the time during the election, obviously people are not as engaged right now because people are a lot more engaged in the middle of an election. But if you look at my average impressions at the time between my accounts, because like I said, I had those 2 accounts at the time with Loomer Unleashed and Laura Looney Bin, it was over. It was either 500 million per month. And I mean, my account grew exponentially. So it was, very large growing account because people were following my account for news relating to the election. And it became very central to President Trump's legal cases. Sometimes President Trump would even share my articles. And you can imagine when the president, shares your posts, it goes pretty viral. So yeah, it was very accurate. Generally, those impressions, are you publishing your own content? It's not like you're publishing content created by somebody else, is that right? Well, the way the Elon Musk zone works is you can publish your content. You can comment on content. You could publish content by other people and comment on it. So sometimes I would upload clips and maybe somebody had caught something on camera at a rally or something. And I would comment on it as, a reporter covering politics. Sometimes I would just post, personal opinions. But in terms of the overall impressions, right? The reach, it was 500 million impressions per month. And it was, widely documented too in the media multiple times, even though as the fake news media still counts. My account was probably one of the most followed accounts, as it related to the covering of the election. Great. So what does it mean to get loomered? Well, loomered was a term that I coined when I was doing my investigative reporting when I first started my media propaganda company. It's kind of like a guerrilla investigative reporting. To be loomered is to be confronted on video and peppered with questions generally about, corruption or fraud or, confronted, right? On video. It was this concept of, being, aggressively, right? Like when I say aggressively in a very journalistic manner, peppered with questions, very direct questions about your activities as a politician or your activities as, generally the targets of loomerings are members of the media, politicians, or, people who are of public concern. So I don't think I need to take the time to show you because I think we're talking about the same thing. But I've seen a video of you, for example, following Governor DeSantis. I think it's actually the interlude you just referred to, in which you have your phone up and you're asking questions. And someone is filming you asking the questions, correct? Yeah. But that's a different reference. Or that one was during Iowa. That was almost a year after the initial one. God, get with the times. God, we're talking about the original ones. God. But that was a different encounter. I didn't encounter the governor like on video in March when I first got invited to Mar-a-Lago. That was just me standing outside of his book signing in Leesburg, Florida. I wasn't even in front of the governor. I was just in the parking lot of the Books A Million in Leesburg, where I normally am in the parking lot. And, it was me and several elderly Trump supporters who showed up and they called the cops. But yes, that would be an example of loomering the second. She showed up with her elderly Trump supporters in tow. Thank you. You already testified you worked with Project Veritas. And you were there from 2015 to 17, is that correct? Yeah, 17. But James is one of my closest friends, even though he's a known fraud. And he wrote the foreword from my book. And so I worked there in like an official capacity until 17. But even throughout 18, not in a paid capacity, I was assisting with helping, disseminate some of their communications until I was banned everywhere. Okay. And did you work with a media company called Rebel Media? Briefly, yes. It's a Canadian-based company that does a lot of investigative journalism, and they're kind of international. And they were looking for New York correspondents. And at the time, I'd been living in New York. And so I had applied to be initially asked to assist them with fundraising. And then I wanted to be their New York correspondent. I quickly learned that they were more interested in my connections for the sake of raising money. So I resigned. Okay. That's actually not on your resume. Is there a reason? Because I was really only there for a couple months and they didn't really allow me to do a lot of the work I really wanted to do. Because I came to realize after the fact that they were more concerned with my donor connections. What? You're just saying how great they are. They wanted me because I also assisted James O'Keefe with the fundraising. I think they were more interested in me trying to bring them donors. And then they realized that I wanted to, do my journalism. It felt very restrictive. And I was like, it's not really what I want to do because I don't want to be a professional fundraiser. I want to do my journalism. So it's like, I wasn't really there long. I think it was like 2 or 3 months. Did you ever work at InfoWars? I didn't work for, I shouldn't even say it. So let's say Dinfo Doors. I contributed to Dinfo Doors. I was invited on Dinfo Doors several times by Schmalik Schmones, but I never had a contract with Dinfo Doors. But I have accepted money in the past from Dinfo Doors. I will say, even though I wasn't employed by them. So you took money from them even though you didn't work for them? What? Because they used to do these like video contests where if you had like really good footage or, you had covered a story, they would pay for the footage, right? I don't think they do that as much anymore. But back in the day, they're bankrupt. What? They're bankrupt and defunct, right? Well, this was before their lawsuit, but back in the day, things have obviously changed with professional progression of social media. A lot of freelance journalists would be paid for their content or their clips. And so as an independent journalist, sometimes I would sell some of the footage to Dinfo Doors or Gateway Pundit, but I was never employed by them. In the past, it was just free. In the past, you referred to yourself as an activist, correct? What did you mean by that? Somebody that, fights for a specific cause. I'm a journalist, but I'm also an activist. I consider myself to be a human rights activist. I fight against human rights abuses, right? I'm an activist. I'm an activist in the way that I speak out against, I don't even want to say it just to be safe here, guys. And an activist against anti-Semitism. An activist is anybody that uses their voice or their platform to advocate for a cause, to speak out. I mean, I was an activist for free speech. I think everybody in some capacity is an activist for the causes that they support. Have you referred to yourself as an influencer? I may have. Again, that's kind of a interesting term. I don't like calling myself an influencer because I'm a journalist, but I know that a lot of times, when you have a large following, people will call you a social media influencer, but I'm a journalist. I have a degree in journalism. I graduated with a 4.0. It's not like I'm a pretend journalist. I have an actual degree, not like a chump university degree in journalism, and have a media company with one employee. But again, that term could be used if somebody is influencing something, right? So my journalism could influence people's opinions on something, or my opinions could influence something. So, it kind of just depends on your definition of the term influencer. But I don't really like when people say, oh, she's a social media influencer, because it's I feel like influencers are more people who post photos of themselves, or oh, buy this thing or buy this makeup. And you're changing affect a change in society, right? Rather than sell a handbag? Yeah, by exposing corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse, doing my investigative journalism, speaking out about the state of our country, reporting on the news. I mean, I don't like using the term influencer. I may have used the term in the past, but generally, if anyone calls me an influencer, I try to say, oh, I don't really like that term, right? But I'm not going to really fight people on it, because I don't think a lot of people are trying to be malicious when they say it. I just think it's such a widespread term. It's just used now to describe people that have large followings. Do you have a career goal? Yeah. What is it? I really wanted to work for my cult leader, and I wanted to work in the White House. And I wanted to work in the White House doing communications or being a vetting director. Wanted to work in the office of PPO. It's always been a goal and a dream of mine to work in a presidential administration in the White House. I have a lot of goals, and I've always had a lot of goals, but unfortunately I've been subjected to a lot of censorship and targeting by social media over the last years of my life because of my political views. And that has stunted a lot of my aspirations. Just like I believe this defamation has stunted my goals and aspirations, because, when you accuse somebody of something like sleeping with the president, it kind of makes you radioactive, even if people know that it's fake. Is it the case that there was an article published on CNN, perhaps it was last week or a couple days ago, who knows what the date is. Anyway, it was a month ago, saying that you wanted a press credential. You interviewed in the article. I wondered if that's accurate, that you wanted a credential. Yeah, I wanted a White House credential. KK Caroline Leave It Alone, who's the press secretary, main propagandist, when she gave her first briefing, I believe it was during the first briefing, may have been one of the first few briefings, she said that they were opening up the press briefing room to new media. And traditionally speaking, right? The White House briefing room has been kind of an elitist place where only mainstream media has been allowed to get this credentials. And so the Trump administration wanted to kind of adapt the press briefing to, in new independent media / propagandist. And I would say that I'm an independent journalist / propagandist. I obviously do not work for a mainstream publication, because no one would ever hire me. And most people today consume their media from independent sources. And so they said, we're opening a new media seat. They said they actually closed a new media seat, which was in the front row of the press briefing room. And they were going to start diversifying the press room, and that they invited anybody who wanted to apply as a journalist, whether you're an independent media, independent journalist, blogger, TikToker, YouTuber. They made it very broad. They said you could apply to get a badge. I applied, and my correspondent, Charles Downs, also applied, and we did not hear back. And yet, in the CNN piece, you say that's because you believed you would. It was an official form, right? And so, like, when you ask for a lot of these communications, what you have to understand is they do a lot of these things through forms, right? So even when you're asking for on the campaign to get the credentials for my staff, right? It's a link that they make available to the public, and then they disable the links and you fill out the form. And then you either get like a QR code that's sent to you. It's not really like a communication, right? So you said you had told CNN, and I'll quote it. You said, I don't think there's, and I can show it to you for the purposes. That's fine. You can read it. It's fine. I do think there's a fear that I may ask questions about the loyalties of people in the White House, Loomer told CNN, and they fear me having a national or global microphone to ask those questions. Does that sound correct to you? Yeah. And I would say that there is an element of professional jealousy. And I'm sure, that's part of the aspect. I obviously break a lot of stories. And I think that there's jealousy and an animosity, not just in the media, but just in the culture of politics in general, where sometimes people, maybe they're jealous of my, when I say my relationship with President Trump, the fact that, I wasn't born into a wealthy family. I wasn't born rich. I'm not rich. I really worked hard as a young woman to have the kind of access that I had and to build the media company with one employee despite the adversity. I ran for Congress and lost. President Trump had endorsed me. He voted for me. And I think a lot of people kind of resent the fact that I didn't just give up, right? After being in lawsuits with like some of the most powerful companies in the world. And I think a lot of people would just like me to go away and give up. But I kept on fighting. And I think the president admires that, right? He always talks about how he likes fighters. And so while there are people who are jealous of me, I think there's also like, I'm not a sycophant, right? Oh my God. Yes, dude, you are one of the biggest ones out there. What do you mean you're not a sycophant? Like, we look up Donald Trump sycophant in the dictionary, we're getting a photo of Laura Loomer. So I report on the stories, and I oftentimes, will call out what I perceive as vetting failures. It's what a journalist is supposed to do. I mean, I'm not a propagandist or mouthpiece. You're supposed to report the truth, and sometimes that involves being a bit critical. You think some of the people are a little jealous of your success? Yeah. I do. I think that they're jealous of the fact that President Trump likes me, genuinely likes me as a person, and he says it multiple times at rallies. She's a tremendous person. She's a wonderful woman, a patriot. I think it bothers people. I think a lot of people get jealous when they're not singled out. And I think a lot of the media is jealous because, maybe they're like, oh, well, she's a journalist. How come the president singles her out as opposed to us, right? I think the president appreciates the fact that I'm a genuine, nice person, and I can't read people's minds, but I would say it's probably an element of jealousy. And then they take a bathroom break, and we are going to take our break there as well, and we will pick it up here where she says that she has a boyfriend. Ooh. Very soon, we will pick it up there on page 102, guys. All right. So appreciate you all tuning in. Please make sure you follow the main page.